Gamers are dead. It's a familiar phrase to some gamers more than others, most associated with a series of articles that broke on August 28th of 2014 across multiple gaming sites, declaring that the gamer identity should be retired due to it being exclusionary. But that was just the most recent gasp in what has been a narrative for over a decade now. Edge magazine? Well, they were pushing this narrative in the early 2000s, for example. The purpose back then was a lot more opaque, and only the trappings have really changed. It's trying to split off the gamer from the player in an attempt to drive a wedge between the dedicated fans, those who value games, and people who play for other purposes, like playing Clash of Clans to pass the time. I'll go into more details about the common themes that every iteration of Gamers Are Dead has had for over 10 years in a later video. Something that may come as a surprise to some of you is that it isn't just games journalists who push the idea that gamers are dead. It's also pushed by academics too, obviously. Some light digging into a few Diagra papers has revealed this. But that's not all. It was also pushed in books by authors. It was pushed in videos by YouTubers.
This gamer label and stereotype need to go.
But what we're here to discuss today is yet another vector that this narrative can be pushed through, even more directly by the people who benefit from its industry cheapening effects. I'm here to tell you about Gamers Are Dead being pushed by developers and publishers. Let me introduce you to Campo Santo. So what is this Campo Santo? Well, it's a San Francisco-based video game studio, the ones behind the game Firewatch. In this video, we'll be focused on employees of Campo Santo. Jake Rodkin, the director for Firewatch, Chris Remo, the composer for Firewatch, Jane Nook, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, she was an artist who worked on the game, and the designers, Nels Anderson. So what is Firewatch? Well, it's yet another drawled, Unity-based walking simulator. What drew our attention to it were a couple of names that were listed as special thanks in the credits. Now, some say that the inclusion of these names is reason enough to boycott the game, while others say that gamers should buy the game regardless of who's thanked in the credits. Well, after some research, we can safely say that for reasons not to buy the game, the inclusion of Anita Sarkeesian and Tim Schafer in the credits of Firewatch is among the least. First, we have Jake Rodkin, the director for Firewatch. From his comments on Twitter, it's obvious that he's a great supporter of Anita Sarkeesian. He even goes so far as to agree when Anita says that Namco Bandai should not be employing women to work at the Dark Souls 3 display at E3. And when Anita complained about the fact that Polygon had the audacity to do objective reporting, Jake's response was, wow. But all this is besides the point, as we've already established that Campo Santo are fans of Anita's work. I mean, they did put her name as special thanks in the credits after all. The real issue is what Jake Rodkin thinks about gamers. And, well, I'll let his own words speak on that. Gamers are kind of insane, Jake said. Why would he say something like that? Oh, because a number of them were unhappy with the newly revealed cover for Bioshock Infinite. Now, there are actually many reasons that one might be unhappy with this cover. It doesn't show much info about what the game is, other than it's a first-person shooter, plus how the cover is derivative, right down to the choice of color scheme. That poor cover might deter someone from buying the game. But I think that Owen Good summed it up the best in his piece about the controversy that he wrote for Kotaku. It's one of the better articles on that site. He wrote, quote, "Conversely, if Bioshock Infinite's cover is an accurate snapshot of what this game is on the day of release, then its devoted fans are right to suspect what's inside is corrupted by mass marketing and movie hero FPS cliches. I don't believe that will be the case, but this is the face of one of a few games coming out next year that will release to high artistic expectations." So let me get this straight. To Jake Rodkin, being worried about this sort of thing, that the next game in your favorite series may not be as good as the last one, is insanity? At the very least, Jake does acknowledge that the cover is terrible, but his issue with the situation is that Irrational decided to include a reverse cover for gamers who didn't like the default one. Non-gamer people don't get out the torches and pitchforks because something they'll never look at is built to move off a shelf, he said in reply to a Twitter user. And in reply to Chris Remo, he said, gamers saying, "Make it for me, make everything for me," is off-putting and entitled, and irrational bowing to that also irks. Just one little problem with that. While it's true that gamers have been complaining about poor video game box art, they certainly aren't the only ones. I mean, film buffs have also been complaining about bad movie posters for just as long. And there's really no excuse. There's no reason why Jake wouldn't know this, considering that he's been in contact with an artist by the name of Ollie Moss for 2 years prior to this. Ollie Moss is most well known for making fan posters for movies, of which Jake has purchased. This wasn't just some one-time outburst either. It sets a clear trend for what's to come. When Raphael von Lyrop, creator of The Long Dark, posted to Twitter a lament about the current trend in which audience games were made for, Jake responded with, "We should all start talking about making games for people. Players and gamers are just constructs, just like users." Because, there's no difference between any of those terms, just like there's no difference between a film buff and someone who just watches movies.
R.I.P. Flappy Bird. You were in no way related to Mario Brothers. You may not have been good, but you had a notable meta story, so I downloaded you.
Okay then, because it was in no way related to Mario Brothers, are you blind or something, or just stupid?
If it was a game, gamers like they'd worship it for the cultural references. Nope. Got to assuage doubt that it's a full-featured modern game with everything gamers expect. That's right, get those folks! The gamer identity itself doesn't really matter except for one crucial aspect, the buying of games. Gamer culture sucks and normalizes really shitty behavior. Frown. I never recommend old thumbs anymore for this reason.
Really, nigga?
Maybe video games are the medium of the 21st century, only in that they seem to irresistibly collide with every shitty thing about this era.
I came to laugh at you.
Think gamers are dead? This shocking line may contain the proof.
707 Radio Graffiti.
The engineer is a spy.
Gamers are dead as an editorial.
Weird to see adults clinging to jocks versus nerds when the sports industry and video game industry are just the same dude in different t-shirts.
Same shirt even.
Then we have the designers for Firewatch. Nels Anderson, in response to Matthew Wise saying, "I just think it's a mistake to talk about, quote, gamer or, quote, the broader market. We mean people who buy FPSs. Nels Anderson said, "Yep, absolutely. I find the notion of making a game for gamers to be equal parts absurd and horrid." And here's Chris Remo, the composer for Firewatch. He had this to say, "I think, quote, gamer and, quote, gaming community have become disproportionately loaded terms. And gamer is one of my least favorite terms, as well as anyone who self-describes as adjective gamer is automatically someone I don't pay any attention to in the first place." Next, we have Jane Ng, one of the artists for Firewatch. The first thing in The Vanishing of Ethan Carter is, "This narrative does not hold your hand in text. I wanted to barf," said Jane. So why would Jane say something like that? Well, because she was replying to a Twitter user who said, "So, the guy who helped make Vanishing of Ethan Carter has gone full gator, as expected." See, Jane is no stranger to that particular hashtag used by gamers to advocate for a higher standard of journalism and a greater focus on consumer advocacy. Back in November of 2014, she wrote, quote, "Sad to see some pro-GG students think not hiring them equals discrimination. Sorry, but being an obstinate asshole isn't a protected class." Then, when called out on this narrow-minded bullshit by Stardock CEO Brad Wardell, quote, "A willingness to publicly affiliate with GG itself indicates a lack of common sense, comprehension, and empathy. It isn't even discriminating their ideology, it's, I'm not sharing 40 hours a week with this lack of common sense." Now, it's strange that she would say this, considering that a few of her co-workers at Campo Santo have posted in the Gamergate hashtag several times before. This shows that they clearly understand that a hashtag is not responsible for the harassment of women, because if hashtags were harassers, they'd be partially responsible for that harassment. And anyway, disagreeing with someone's opinion is not harassment, no matter how much certain people want to frame it as such. She later doubles down by saying, "To me, the GG label is like the Confederate flag. It's hard to talk about heritage/racism if it's waved. Because how dare someone let those filthy commoners have their say at the grown-ups discussion table." Later that same day, she also says, "I'm a minority woman who thinks pro-GG minority women are also assholes that I don't want to work with. Shrug."
40 to tweet that it's not your shield.
Okay. Again, I cannot be blamed for what the puppet says.
So at this point, it has become painfully obvious that the team at Campo Santo is not particularly fond of gamers. You know, that group of people who had a hand in making The Walking Dead so successful. A game that some of the team had previously worked on. So by this point, some of you may still be thinking to yourselves, oh, well, I can separate the art from the politics of the creator, so I don't mind supporting the game. But this isn't quite the same as simply disagreeing with an artist's personal politics. If you are a gamer, if you are someone who's played a lot of games and has a high standard of quality for them, then when Jake Rodkin says something like, "Gamers are kind of insane," he's talking about you, the people who are directly responsible for giving him money so he can continue on living. These are the people that you are giving your money to when you buy their game. Do you really think that they care about the medium of video games beyond leeching off it for cash? Are these really the sort of people you want to be supporting with your hard-earned dollars?